Today's guest is Philip Pape. We had such a fun conversation on how lifting weights can really change your physique and also help give you longevity. He hosts one of the top 25 nutrition podcasts. It's called Wits and Weights. You'll definitely want to check that out. Philip had a self proclaimed dad bod and then turned that all around in 2020. He gives us all his tips and tricks and how he does it, how he helps his clients be successful. It's an episode you're definitely not going to want to miss. I've got a question for you. Who's the person you're being? Are you satisfied? It's okay. This is a judge-free zone, and it's exactly why I started the show. Welcome to Be the Person, a podcast for the brave and the curious who are ready to explore who they are fully created to be. I'm your host, Annie Randall, the adventurous one leading this investigative journey of transformation. By delving into topics and asking unexpected questions, we will discover the keys for unlocking our true potential and being our best selves today. You may be surprised by what you find when you let go of fear in order to discover the answers of becoming the person you were made to be. Welcome to Be the Person podcast. Today, we have Philip Pape joining us, and you guys are in for such a treat. He has an amazing podcast, which I have been listening to so much, Wits and Weights. It's in one of the top 25 nutrition podcasts. So I'm super excited to talk to Philip. He does a lot of work with people on strength training and building muscle. Welcome, Philip, to the podcast.
And it's great to be here, and I really appreciate what you said about my show and that you listen to it.
Yeah, I've been loving it. I found you a few weeks ago, and I think I binged like 8 episodes so far.
Yeah, that's what happens. Did you start from the beginning or with recent ones?
Well, I started with recent ones, and
Okay.
then I always go back because I like to listen to people's trailers and some of your beginning episodes. So I've done both. I haven't got to the middle, but I've done the beginning and the end.
Yeah, because I've always you might find this already, but a little bit embarrassed with my early episodes, I cringe a little when I hear it just because of the quality compared to where it is later. But then people say, that's when you were just getting into it and really wanting to share everything you learned with all this passion you have. And I learned a ton from it. So I would never get rid of them, and I'm happy that they're there.
No, I thought they were
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's fun to see the progression.
It is. It's true. Like we were talking about the podcast business beforehand. There's just so much joy in being able to share with this platform.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about you and your story, what you do today, and really how you got to that place.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short because I do like to talk. But I would say my story today started when I was about to turn 40, after years and years and years of frustration mixed with curiosity. And what I mean by that is I've always been a person who takes action, right? Like you probably know a lot of folks who are self-motivated, they take action, but it would never get me what I wanted in terms of my physique, my health, my performance, athleticism, things like that. Um, Mostly it came down to constantly being on diets, constantly trying to lose weight, throughout my 20s and 30s, and not really understanding much about building muscle or training. So I jumped around between a lot of programs. I did a lot of different styles of cardio and lifting. And it wasn't until I was about to turn 40 that I stumbled across some books like the Muscle and Strength Pyramids and a whole bunch of others I could name in the evidence based fitness world that opened my eyes to the value of strength training and progressive overload. And so I started lifting weights properly, I'm going to call it, for the very first time. Now, for me, that was using barbells, but you don't have to use barbells. And I started to progress pretty quickly and eat a lot of food. And I gained a bunch of weight in the process, but I also got a lot stronger. And it was the first time I had ever actually changed my body in a way that worked. Okay. That started to stick. And that led me down the path of reading books and listening to podcasts and watching videos on nutrition, on flexible dieting, on sustainable dieting, and getting away from the restrictive approach I had in the past toward a more sustainable approach that I use today, which then led to the podcast in late 2021. And that was a passion project for me, just to share everything I learned. How do you build a home gym? How do you start strength training? How do you find a program? Why is protein important? All those little things, and started to. At the beginning, I wondered how I would have enough topics to go on, and now I wonder how I can pump out enough episodes to get everything in my brain out to
Yeah.
the world. So, the funny thing is the podcast was a hobby that then led to what's now a business because people found it interesting and unique and helpful and reached out for help, and I was able to do that and start to grow a business on the side. But that's kind of the 30,000 foot view. We can go back in time. We can talk about the diets I did and all that, but I'll leave that to you of where you want to go.
Okay. Awesome. I love that story. And just from passion to now your business. Tell us a little bit about your business today and what you do.
Okay, so I call myself a high performance nutrition coach and physique engineer. I think I invented that term. I don't know because my background is in engineering. I'm a kind of a data nerd, a sciencey math guy who loves spreadsheets and tracking and all that. And if you're a client of mine, whether you like that or not, you're going to come to love it. I think because of the way we apply it to getting results and then seeing how awareness and data does that. But my over the last 20 years of my career in engineering, I became a leader in the corporate world and I coached and I mentored teams of people. And that taught me to develop skills like emotional intelligence and self awareness and coaching and mentoring, which I think ties really well to the one on one and the group kind of coaching I do today. So, basically, what I do today is I have one-on-one group programs. I'm probably going to have, or I'm sorry, one-on-one programs. I'll probably have group programs soon. Have a big community. I have the podcast, and it's all about body composition, getting strong, building muscle, losing fat, and getting the physique you want.
I love that. And I was telling you a little bit before we started recording about Orange Theory and how they're having their transformation challenge and they're
Mhm.
adding a category for muscle gain. And
Oh,
I
I love that.
love that because I think that is definitely the way there's so much research now about muscle leading to longevity. Have you followed that? And what are your thoughts on muscle and longevity?
Oh, huge. I don't know if you follow individuals like Dr. Gabriel Lyon,
Yeah.
and others. I've come to the point where I believe that unless you have a very unhealthy level of extra weight to lose, like it's emergent an emergency or a health crisis where you need to lose weight now, building muscle is probably the way to go first, even if you have 20 or 30 pounds to lose, which is kind of shocking in some circles because in the nutrition world, all the marketing is based on weight loss, and I think there's a big difference between weight loss and fat loss. But I also think that fat loss is made much easier when you have more muscle. And so if you kind of step it all back and say, why is muscle important? Well, just look at the 70 and 80-year-olds walking around who have not been strength training and what happens with age. What happens because of muscle loss, right? Sarcopenia, frailty, the chance of injury goes up, the strength goes way down. You lose 30 or 40% of your muscle mass between the ages of 30 and 70, and all that leads to all the other issues that we have with aging, the metabolic diseases like diabetes and heart disease and whatnot, as well as the uh, hormonal related dysfunction and osteopenia, right? Which is loss of bone density. So when you talk about longevity, it's funny because I did a podcast that hasn't come out yet called The Dangers of Low Protein for Longevity, where there's a group of people now claiming that a low protein diet will help you live longer because of rat studies. And we can talk about why they're flawed in so many ways. But it's hard to argue that not having muscle is a better way to go, right?
Yeah, I would
So, yeah,
100% agree. I'm a
of
big
course.
fan of Dr. Gabrielle Lyon and her new book. I think it's
Mhm.
so important that we have muscle as we age. It just helps us age so much better in so many different ways.
Yeah, I would put muscle first. I mean,
Mhm.
here's the thing. You've probably seen this with your clients. There are challenges with body image, with self-talk, with identity, with fear of gaining weight in people, but especially in women. And two-thirds of my clients are women. And I've learned a lot as a male in this business from my female clients and going on podcasts about the mental and emotional struggles from this that stem from usually a very young age, often due to societal expectations and parenting and the clean your plate club and all these other things. And so the weight on the scale becomes a very important number to a lot of people and women in particular, and it's hard to get away from that. So I like to dispel all the mystery around scale weight and body composition and muscle and kind of put it all together so that scale weight it becomes a little data point on the side but not the be all end all, and we realize that what you want to be fit, you want to be lean, you want to be strong and capable to the day you die comes from muscle. And guess what, you might be heavier to have that muscle, but you'll still look great and look leaner and have a great physique.
Yeah. I think you're right on because we were just talking as a leadership team about this yesterday because there are so many people that are scared to enter that category of build muscle instead of fat loss. And we were talking because we all lift heavy and people are afraid. They're afraid of that number on the scale. They're afraid of getting bulky. And
Mhm.
especially as women, that is so hard to do. It's just not the look you're going to get if you do lift heavy.
Yeah, it's totally true. It's a conversation I have every day with clients, including clients who've been with me for a while, who've gone through multiple phases of building muscle and losing fat. And when we look at their pictures, we're like, wow, you're super lean compared to how you were, and yet still there's that doubt of like, I don't want to gain weight. I'm afraid of gaining weight. It's just so inherent. So I'm not saying we're going to eliminate that fear because that's an emotion, but I
Mhm.
will say that if you have data and you have facts to back you up and show that you can make progress despite the weight on the scale, it at least helps to eliminate some of that overreaction.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what it does for your metabolism when you gain muscle.
The best way I like to look at it as when we burn calories every day, about 2/3 of those calories are just from our body existing. Right, it's our basal metabolic rate. We just walk around and sleep, and we burn all these calories. The more muscle you have, the bigger that number is. So you can burn muscle, or you can burn calories around the clock by having extra muscle. Now it's not a magic pill in that you're not going to burn 100 calories more for every pound of muscle, right? It's not like you could go from eating 2,000 calories to 4,000 calories, but it's meaningful. Meaning, roughly for every pound of muscle you gain, I think the data shows 6 to 9, maybe 10 pounds or 6 to 9 calories per day for every pound of muscle. So let's say you're a female in your first year, you could easily gain 10 pounds of muscle if you do it properly. That equates to an extra 100 calories a day for free. That's huge. But beyond that, by having more muscle, you're able to do more with your body. You're able to be more active. You're able to push more in the gym. You're able to be more resilient in so many ways. That actually adds up to even more calories burned, right? Because now you have the acute stressors from lifting, reducing your chronic life stress, and that life stress then helps increase your metabolism as well. So there's a lot of side benefits to having muscle.
Yeah, I love that. Would you say then it goes the other way? Because I know when a lot of people, this is going to come out the end of January, there are New Year's resolutions,
Mm.
tons of fad diets right now where we cut calories tremendously and then we lose muscle. Talk a little bit about that because does that have just the opposite effect then on our metabolism?
Oh yeah, so I do like talking about this topic a lot. It's called body fat overshooting, where when you're losing weight, think of it this way: if you lose 20 pounds of weight, if you're not strength training, about 5 pounds of that could be muscle loss. So that I used to say more than that, but I was a little sporty on that. The evidence says about a quarter of the tissue. Compare that to somebody who's lifting weights. At most, they're going to lose a half a pound, maybe a pound at most of that 20 pounds as muscle tissue. If they're going at the proper rate of loss, they're eating protein and they're training. So if you lose 20 pounds, five of it is fat or five of it is muscle. When you regain that weight, and guess what? 95% of people are going to regain that weight and then some, you're gaining all fat back. So now you go from, let's say, 150 pounds before your diet down to 130, back to 150. You now have 5 more pounds of fat and 5 pounds less of muscle. And that creates that skinny fat phenomenon that as we age, we get a little more softer. And like you said, our metabolism starts to decline. I was just talking about that this morning with someone, how from the age of like 20 to 65, your metabolism between two people with the same body composition is going to be the same. The difference is we lose so much muscle that our body composition isn't the same as a 20-year-old. But if you work out, if you lift weights, you can build back that muscle and basically turn back the clock. So I'm 43. I probably have the metabolism of my 28-year-old self now. You know what I mean? But like 10 years ago, I just had my chronological age as metabolism. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I think you're right on too, because that is a common myth. One that when you age, and I think there is a certain point, maybe after 65, there is a change in your metabolism. But I'm 48 right now, and it's been the same thing. I've been able to maintain, but because I strength train, I've been really diligent about keeping the muscle I have as I age because I know how important it is, not only for health, but for your metabolism and just to age overall.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, that's got to be number one, right? Is muscle, and then we can get into the other things that affect metabolism as well, if you want. Things that might surprise people, like alcohol. There are lots of other little things that can increase our metabolism, so that we don't have to cut the calories, even if we are going into a fat loss phase. And that's what I like to help people. Is not You're not restricting. You're building yourself up. You're making yourself, a fat burning machine. Let's call it. To use a clickbaity term.
Yeah, give us a few of those. I'm interested to know things that really do affect your metabolism.
Yeah. So the big one is going to be really the rate of loss or gain while in a diet or in a surplus. So when we're in a calorie deficit, um, honestly, the biggest change is the fact that you're losing weight and in the deficit. And it suppresses your hormones, your thyroid, your reproductive hormones, your leptin, ghrelin, cortisol, all that stuff. And it causes your body to conserve more energy. So just not being in a diet is one way to avoid suppressing your metabolism, understanding that sometimes we want to be in a diet. So I get that. Another one is cardio, right? Doing too much. Now, I'm definitely a big fan of HIIT and I'm a big fan of cardio. And there's a plenty of tolerance for that in your life. If you love HIIT, if you love Orange Theory, if you love, running or biking, you can incorporate it in your life. But if you do too much of it, that's a stressor on your body, and your body will compensate through something called the constrained theory of energy. There's a book called Burn by Herman Poncer. It's really good if you want to learn about how every population across the world has basically the same metabolism, no matter their activity level, because our bodies are really good at compensating. And as you go really active, it starts to compensate the other way. So my point is, if you're trying to lose fat, one of the worst things you could do is do extra cardio. You'd be better off doing high load strength training and keeping the cardio less. Alcohol, I mentioned.
Yeah.
People don't realize that even one or two drinks a day, just casual drinking, can suppress your hormones and make it harder to lose fat. And it can change the nutrient partition as well, to where your fat gets stored in your abdomen, in the visceral fat, belly fat, ladies and men. And that's not where we want it, because that's actually a dangerous place for fat. The last one I'll mention, because again, I have a whole list of these, would be sleep. We underestimate the value of sleep. Maybe not. I know more people are talking about it, and I'm sure you talk about it as well a lot. But in a sleep restricted group versus a normal sleep group, they've found significant increase in hunger and visceral fat storage versus the group that got a lot of sleep, even when calories are equated. So even if you're tracking your food and your deficit and all that, trying to lose weight at a certain rate, you're just going to feel a lot hungrier, right? Or if you're gaining weight, the fat's going to go to the belly instead of even distribution. So those are just a few of the factors.
I love those. And I really prioritize sleep right now. And
Mhm.
that's been a big change for me as the research has come out. Because in the past, I thought, you know what, I'm too busy. I can't do it. I can't sleep that much. But now I really do. As you look at the studies and you look at, even I read one the other day on cortisol and how it really spikes and stays spiked most of the day if you have a bad night's sleep. It really has made me prioritize and change my own personal habits.
I can't tell you enough how much it's helped me and others, because I used to get about 5.5, 6 hours of sleep, and I was the kind of person that said, like, "Well, I'm a hard worker. I got to work. I've got the business. I've got to make the most out of my day. You know, only lazy people sleep that much, and my body doesn't need more than 5 hours of sleep." All the excuses. And as soon as I added a half hour, and then later on another half hour, another half hour. Now I try to get around 7, 7.5, which for me to get more than that is kind of a lot to ask.
Yeah.
But, but still, for me, I notice a difference. And by difference, I mean, you feel well rested, you don't feel stressed, you don't feel like you're crashing by the end of the day. And then it all correlates to these other things. By the way, for those listening, like if you can't get extra time in bed, at least you can improve the quality in bed. And one of my favorite hacks for that is a sleep mask. And another favorite hack is blue blocker glasses before in the last couple hours before bed to block out all the blue light and kind of help the melatonin ramp up. So just a couple hacks.
You know what? Those are good. And in fact, I was just looking at blue blocker glasses because that isn't something I've used, but I know how much research is behind them. Any recommendations? And maybe you don't, but just on brand or type or anything, does it matter?
I don't think it does. My only recommendation is make sure they're amber tinted and not the like gamer or computer blue blockers that are clear. There is a difference. I don't remember what it was exactly. It's been so long since I looked at why I just tell people to do it.
Yeah.
I know personally every night when I put them on, sometimes I'll fall asleep not intending to, like while my wife and I are watching TV or something, I'll just fall asleep because I have these glasses on where if I didn't, I'd be more wired. The blue light of the TV would be kind of keeping me up.
Awesome. I love those.
Mhm.
Two great hacks.
Do you struggle with sleep, bloating or digestion, sugar cravings, low energy, or feeling tired all the time? I struggled with several of those things, and what I found it was tied to my gut health. Studies have shown the standard American diet strips away a lot of the good bacteria, and that causes many of those symptoms. When I started to refeed my gut and weed out some of the bad bacteria, I noticed that I slept a lot better, my sugar cravings went down, and I just had more energy. I'm going to put a link to the show in the show notes of the products I use. I love them. They're all natural. You take throughout the day, and it's really been a game changer for me.
What about myths really for losing weight? Because again, this is the time of year when people are really they're wanting to build muscle, but probably the first thing that comes up to most people is losing weight. And what are some myths that you typically see and really help people work past?
Which one you want to talk about? Because there's the carbs will make you fat myth. There's like there's some perfect diet myth. Which one do you want to talk about? Because there are a lot out there.
Yeah, maybe just the perfect diet and
Yeah.
what people eat. Maybe we'll go there.
Yeah. There's some diets that are very popular right now. I think keto is still popular. The carnivore diet has been making waves. There's definitely programs like Optavia that are, in my opinion, just super dangerous in so many ways. And what they all have in common is they're giving you rules of what you can and can't eat. I don't know about you. When I'm told what not to do, I rebel. Okay. And in fact, studies have demonstrated over decades that when we're given a rigid approach to dieting, we invariably quote unquote fall off the wagon because there is a wagon. And I'm going to talk about an approach that doesn't have a wagon. You fall off the wagon and you feel like a failure. You have this all or nothing mindset and you go back to binging whatever you were cutting out. And for a lot of us, that might be carbs or sweets, indulgences, whatever. Even plants. I mean, I know people on carnivore that are like, I'm craving broccoli and cucumbers. Like, give me some vegetables or fruits. And the what am I trying to say? So the studies that compared rigid versus flexible dieting, where rigid diets are ones that have foods that are labeled or a meal plan or something like that, where you have to eat this way. The reason they don't work is they're forcing you into a moral decision. They're forcing you into this situation where if you give in to the bad food, you're now a bad person, right? That's the connection we make in our brain. Whereas if I said, we know you burn 2,500 calories a day, so let's just assume you have a 2,500 calorie budget and you eat whatever you want. Well, that frees you up significantly, doesn't it? Because now you can choose anything. I mean, you could choose pizza. You could choose whatever. Um, and what's been found with that is it's much easier to maintain your weight. It's much easier to stick with it for the long term and so on. I think the reason that named diets are popular, number one, they're marketed very heavily. Number two, they are simple, deceptively simple, or you know what I mean, right? Like they seem easy because they're rules. Like here's a list of foods. Boom. However, in practice, when you use them, you realize after not eating bread, oats, rice, potatoes for 3, 4, 5 months, you start to crave all those things, right? um, so it's very hard to maintain them. When you have a flexible approach, that's say an 80-20 approach, 80% whole foods, 20% whatever, you can live that way for the rest of your life, right? Now, the restrictive diets, they're successful in the short term because they cause you to stop consuming as many calories. That's it. Like if you go on the keto diet and you say, I'm not going to eat carbs, well, every processed food has carbs. They also have fats, by the way. And so now you're forcing yourself into a much smaller set of foods. You start to eat whole foods, you get fuller, you eat fewer calories, you lose weight. But you might lose weight too quickly. That's a whole different topic related to the previous discussion about losing fat, not muscle. Um, and so that's why they work in the short term, but then you can't stick to them in the long term, right? That answer your question?
It did. I think that's
Okay.
super important because I'm with you that we're looking to make lifestyle changes. Like we could lose 20 pounds in the next month, but that's not an approach that's going to be healthy or sustainable. Like, what can we do for the rest of our lives? So I think that 80-20 approach is really key. Talk to me about protein and the importance of protein, like where you put that in your diet.
Number one.
No.
It is number one. I recently was on a show where I was asked to come up with if you could do something for 30 minutes a day, what would it be? And I broke it down into a 5, a 15-minute, and a 30-minute approach. And in my 5-minute approach, it was simply get protein with every meal. I think it was get protein and get fiber with every meal. There are so many reasons you want to do that. First of all, we need to understand that we're all very deficient in protein, like just humans in general, Americans. If you look at the RDA, that the RDA minimum, it's so low. It's a survivability metric. It's not a thrive and optimality metric. And they've done so many studies over the years looking at what's optimal for building and retaining muscle that we have a pretty good idea what that range is. It's about 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not sure what number you've used. Some people like the 1 because it's a good rule of thumb. So if you're, say, a 150-pound female, that's somewhere between 100 and 150 grams of protein. I guarantee you, if you've never tracked before and you haven't been paying attention to protein, you're probably consuming like 50 grams, right?
Yeah.
Because breakfast is, I don't know, cereal, muffin, banana, nothing, something like that. Lunch is a little sandwich, with chips or maybe vegetables, maybe a salad. And then dinner's where you get all your protein, like usually according to the American diet, right? You get your meat, maybe have a little dairy sprinkled throughout the day, and it adds up to like 50 grams. But you need a lot more than that. So protein is important because it's a building block of your tissue and your muscles, right? And so we have to have it to avoid that muscle wasting we talked about earlier. But more importantly, we want extra protein in there so that when we're lifting weights, we can build new muscle. Secondly, protein is the highest thermic effect of feeding. So it actually burns the most calories when you digest it. I think it's 4 or 5 times as many calories as carbs and fat, which is a lot in relative terms, but the absolute numbers aren't like huge, but you're going to burn some more calories eating protein. The third thing is, and I love this aspect of protein, it is so filling. Right?
Yeah.
So what, in fact, one of the complaints I get is, how could I eat 150 grams of protein? I'm just so full all the time. Right. I do get that. And that's a good problem to have. Like when you
Yeah.
start facing that problem, you realize, oh yeah, I can't fit in all this other food anymore. So it naturally reduces your calories, but also when you shop the grocery aisle for protein, you're going to be sticking to the outside. You're going to stick to animal products and dairy and plant sources and grains and things that have protein. Not many processed foods are going to be in there. So yeah, protein's important. We don't get enough, and we need to track that protein to know how much we're getting and then increase it that way.
Yeah, I agree. And it was probably last October that, I know this and I kind of just quit tracking my macros. I kind of ballpark them now. But I was like, you know what? I want to go back and really pay attention. So I put it in, I use the Carbon app. I know there's
Mhm.
a ton of them out there,
Sure.
but that was an easy one for me to use. And I was like, wow, you really have to pay attention. I'm in the I like to use 1 gram just because it's
Mhm.
easy math for me, but I think 0.7 to 1 is a great formula. And it really, I had to pay attention. I had to start adding in things like eggs, a protein shake, be really intentional about doing that in order to get the protein I needed.
You do, and people are asking that question all the time, like, how do I actually get more protein? Um, first, if you track, you know how much you get. Then the next step I would say is figure out a way to incorporate a protein source into every meal. And for most people that are just trying to maintain their weight, let's not talk fat loss or gaining; it's a different thing. You probably need to eat at least 3 times a day, if not four or five. And that fourth or fifth can simply be a protein shake or cottage cheese or Greek yogurt, right? Or eggs with egg whites. Um, I'm a big fan of an omnivorous diet as making it really easy to get your protein. But I have worked with vegetarians and vegans. It gets a little bit harder. There, you have to have a little more supplementation. You have to really balance the fats and carbs because, like beans and plants that have protein, also have a lot of fats and carbs. And so it's a little bit more of a balance. It's hard, but I would say if you're an omnivore, it's not that hard once you plan for it and spread the food out so you don't feel too full.
Yeah. And the biggest thing for me, honestly, was adding it into breakfast.
Mm.
And I know there's a ton of research behind it. And I felt it in myself in that if I switched and ate protein for breakfast, I ate less throughout the day. I just don't have cravings and I'm a sugar girl. If I let myself, I love sugar and snacks. And so it really cut down the cravings for those.
Yeah, I agree. Timing is huge for some people, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. Like the opposite problem is what we're right me right now. I'm trying to gain is trying to avoid situations that make me too full. So it
Yeah,
depends on which you're trying to make happen. Yeah.
absolutely. I know that you work with a lot of people, and consistency is really one of the things that people struggle with in diet, exercise habits. How do you help people solve that problem?
I'm a big fan of the tiny habits approach. And the metaphor I recently started using was think of your comfort zone as like a bubble or a balloon, right? It's got this soft, flexible edge to it. You're in the comfort zone, you're nice and happy. Everything you do today is in your comfort zone. If you all of a sudden come up with your New Year's resolution, you've never lifted weights, you're not very active, you're not watching your diet, and you say, I'm going to work out 5 days a week, and I'm going to walk 12,000 steps a day, and I'm going to sleep 9 hours a day. You get what I'm saying? You hear it all the time, especially in the fitness industry, which, is a double edged sword. Because, yeah, come on, everybody wants to come in. We're here to help you. But then people give up quickly because they're trying to go way out of their comfort zone. So it's almost like taking a bunch of needles and trying to pop them all the way through to this new goal, and you're all of a sudden like just exploding your balloon. Whereas if you instead just push on the edge of that balloon just a little bit, one step here, and let it adapt, let it kind of stretch and adapt, you can grow that comfort zone. That's the metaphor I like. And so if you're not doing anything we talk about today now, pick one thing that's most achievable. And that might be walking an extra 2,000 steps a day or 1,000 step a day and figure out what activity you're going to do to make that happen. I'm a big fan of goals and I do like resolutions, but I like to break them down into quarterly goals and then micro goals and then daily goals. And it doesn't have to sound complicated. It could be I want to increase my step count by to 12,000 by, June. Right now I'm getting 3,000. So this week I'm going to get 4,000 a day and I'm going to do that by going for a walk after lunch. I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk after lunch and I'm going to put a reminder in my phone to do that. If that's totally easy and achievable, that's your first step. So for me, consistency is not about motivation, willpower, discipline, all of that stuff. It's just about taking a little bit of action to expand your comfort zone every day.
I'm a picture person, so I love that picture because I picture myself in that bubble with the needles.
Yeah.
So I love that because I agree with you. I think it's those little steps that end up because you walk after lunch and then you feel better and you end up walking around more while you're working and
Mhm.
you increase those little things and they get us to the big goals.
Yeah, it's very simple. Now, if you're working with a coach, and this is not a shameless plug, but I will say if you have someone in your support group, whether that's a community, a coach, a group class, things like that, those add to that ability to stick to the goals, because that is a form of external motivation, right? You're getting this extra accountability and support. And that is kind of like in that balloon, it's kind of like creating an extra shell around it. I don't know if that's even a good analogy, but it's
Yeah.
like it's preventing you from going way beyond, but it's allowing you to push a little farther out. Yeah.
I would totally agree. I see that every day at Orange Theory in our studios.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of times people don't want to come. They come because of the person they know that's going to be in class,
Mhm.
or, that we're going to miss them. Just that whole community aspect. One, it makes them walk in the door. And then two, it makes them work a little harder because if Joe next to me is doing it, well, I can do it too then.
It's true. It's true. I think I don't know if you've heard of self-determination theory, where it's the theory of like how do we move forward doing something and be a determinant of our own self like efficacy. I'm rambling here, but self-determination theory. There's three things. One is competency, so you learn the information, you get educated. Two is okay. I should have been prepared for this. One of them is relatedness. That's the one I was going to get to. Relatedness is having community and having other people. Oh, the third is agency. So having the ability to make your own decisions. You're not in prison or you're not being restricted, like the restrictive diets, which take away agency, for example. But yeah, relatedness is one of the three things that increase self-determination. So there's a reason why we like those communities.
Absolutely. It's fun. It makes it more fun too.
Makes it more fun. Yeah, fun.
Yeah.
Love it.
You talk a lot about lifting heavy. What Tell me a little bit. Let's circle back around there because I know that we've gone through. Yes, we need protein. It's going to help us build that muscle. But talk to us a little about when we do the exercise. What really happens in our body when we lift heavy?
Yeah, so the term heavy is relative to you. I just want to be clear when I say that.
Sure.
I'll give you an example what's not lifting heavy. What's not lifting heavy, and if you relate to this as a listener, you'll know what I mean, is you go to the gym for years, do the similar movements or machines, and you've used the same weight all those years. Very common, right?
Yeah.
And you might be going thinking, okay, I'm getting a workout. Maybe you sweat, maybe you get sore, and you are getting a workout. You're staying active, maybe good for your cardiovascular health and your muscular endurance, but you're not building strength. And building strength requires a stimulus that is large enough to challenge your muscle to adapt and grow the next time during your sleep effectively. So by lifting heavy, I simply mean lifting enough weight or putting enough stress on your muscle so that they can grow. Now, for a beginner, that would be, let's say, doing a squat and you're doing 3 sets of 5 at 100 pounds. And then Wednesday, you come in and you do 3 sets of 5 at 105 pounds. And then Friday, 3 sets of 5 at 110 pounds. A lot of people, and I see this with men and women, just don't think in those terms or they don't plan a program to do that. They might just go to the gym not without a plan and just say, well, I'm going to work my upper body today. And they go on the machines and they do stuff. And that felt a little bit hard and I'm done. But if you have a plan for your sets, your reps, your weights, then you know what you did last time. And next time something has to go up, either the weight, the reps, or the sets, or some combination, depending on your programming. So was your question about that?
It was, and I think
Okay.
that's really helpful, in just thinking, yeah, if we go year after year and we're at the same weight, we aren't building strength. We're not lifting heavy enough. I know when you get into like with Orange Theory, it's pre-programmed, but I know some of our listeners also go to the gym on their own. Would you recommend, like for your clients, do you have them go with a pen and paper, maybe a notebook, and write down their sets and what they're doing at the weight?
Yes, 100%. So it's either a notebook or an app. Like there are a bunch of free apps out there, like Strong is a popular one that's free. I have an app that I use with my nutrition coaching clients that they can also have their exercises in there. So you absolutely 100%, in my opinion, should be tracking, just like if you were learning how much protein you ate, you would have to track to know. It's just data. We're not doing it to judge ourselves. We're not doing it to make somebody happy, right? It's just data so that you know you can increase over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just am kind of laughing at myself because I'm old
Okay.
school in that I picture a notebook and a piece of paper and
Yeah.
try and writing it down, but you're right, like an app would be much easier.
And I'll tell you, I have lifting buddies who are hardcore about the notebook, and they laugh at me when I ever suggest an app because they're like, no, 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 real people do it. Like, look, whatever works for you is what it's the right tool for the job.
Yeah. I know you said at the beginning you're a spreadsheet and numbers person. When you coach, do you coach to like different programs with, let's say, macros and different strength training? How do you really help your clients build muscle?
It's very individualized. The principles are the same. The principles of muscle first and flexible dieting, and finding what works for you, making sure we're satisfied and being able to eat what you want to eat and all of that. But it's very personalized. So I always start with a very detailed assessment, to understand what is your work schedule like. Do you have kids? What do you like to eat or don't like to eat? How hard are you training in the gym? What do you like to do with your training? Right? What do you have access to with your equipment? So there's a whole list. It's almost like, I don't like to let clients know they're even getting this before they sign on because it's so long. I figure I'd lose clients if they knew they had to fill it out.
Yeah.
But then once they do, they're happy they did because it gives me like a detective all this stuff I can piece together and say, okay, let's not overwhelm you. Let's focus on one or two things this week that's most important for you, right? Like what's going to get you unstuck? Just what we talked about before, the balloon analogy. What is the one thing that's going to get you really moving forward? Now, because I'm a coach working with them, there are things that everyone's going to do. Everyone is going to track their food and log it because we have to have that awareness.
Mhm.
All my clients are going to know their metabolism on a daily basis so that we can make weekly adjustments. They're going to have custom meals around their workouts. So, like, depending if they work in the morning or in the evening and how much time they have to eat before their workout, we'll have different strategies. I'll recommend supplementation, right? So, it's very, very personalized because that's what worked for me. But because we have data and numbers, we can back it up and track you and your biofeedback weekly to know what's working. What's your stress? What's your sleep? What's your digestion like? What's your libido like? What is your hunger like? All of those things.
Super important. I'm guessing you have some people that make excuses though. And I can't because of my age or my hormones, my genetics. What about those people?
You mean when I'm before they work with me or after they work with me? While they're working with me? 'Cause,
Well, what would you say to somebody that comes to you as a potential client that has those excuses? Like, hey, I want to work with you. I want to get this physique, but, and then their excuse.
Yeah, I mean, I will generally use facts and either share some existing client experiences or what the data shows, or shift their mindset from what's probably potentially a myth that they're holding on to from what they've learned in the past to what reality is. But I don't want to invalidate anyone's feelings or observations. So if you come to me saying that like you just can't handle carbs and carbs don't work for you, and when you eat carbs you get fat and bloated, I'm going to say, okay, like thank you for sharing that with me. Now let's explore that a little bit. What kind of carbs were you eating? When were you eating them? What was the context of that? Are you willing to try something different with me and trust me in this process as we titrate you towards something different, knowing that if it doesn't work, we're going to back off and try something else. So it's kind of like, I want to listen, empathize, but also help you understand that you're reaching out to a coach for a reason, right? Because you're looking for a little expertise and guidance and somebody to trust who can hold you accountable as well.
Yeah. So good. And I know people can learn from you so much either on your podcast or you have a great website and they can connect with you personally. But as we're wrapping up today, maybe just three things that just to summarize what we've talked about today. It's the new year. People want a new you. And what would you summarize like three small important steps they could take today?
These are always tough, and right because
Yeah.
I know we want to, because I would say everything. Okay, so the first would be the comfort zone thing of don't be harsh on yourself. Don't think you have to do it all today. Don't have the all or nothing mentality. Realize that patience and time will get you what you want. But if you just take a moment to think about it and listen to Ann's podcast and reach out to us for help, you know that you can get there one step at a time, right? So just taking a sustainable approach long term. That's a mindset thing. Number two would be, if you're not lifting weights right now, I strongly consider it in some capacity, because I think every human should lift weights. Like, I'm very strong about that in some way, whether it's body weight, bands, dumbbells, I don't care. Just challenge yourself. I've seen 70-year-olds who never did it before. They have joint pain. They can't get off the couch. Maybe they can't get off the toilet. They can't go watch their favorite, theater or football game or whatever, because they can't go upstairs. And all they do is they start squatting to a couch, and the pain starts going away, and they start being able to enjoy all the things in life they couldn't before. That's the power of strength training. So don't think of it as having to get big and muscular and, this amazing physique. Um, then I guess number three would be, support the other people in your life in a positive way when it comes to their health and fitness journey, and don't judge people, because you never know the person next to you, what they've gone through, what they're trying to go through, and where they're going to go in the future. And there are people that, if you just go by what they look like or what they're doing right now, they may have created tremendous progress in the last month or 6 months, and it's the new year. So don't get on people for having new, resolutions and wanting to change. Support them. That's what I would say.
I think those are three great tips. I love those. What's the best way to connect with you?
Besides the podcast, which is Wits and Weights, I would just go to Instagram at Wits and Weights and reach me there. If you don't use social media, which I get it, a lot of you don't, go to witsandweights.com and you can find a million ways to reach out.
Okay. I'll make sure I put all of those links in our show notes as well. So thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us today. I learned a lot, and I think our audience will have learned a lot as well.
Thank you, Anne, for having me on, and for the challenging questions, which I always enjoy sharing with the audience.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to Be the Person podcast. If this would help somebody you know, please share it out. And it would always mean the world to me if you would give us a 5-star review. Thank you so much for listening today.